claim, because the Soviet Union collapsed, that communism is dead. Do these idiots know what communism is? Do they think that a system run by a thug who kills his fellow revolutionaries is communism? Scheiß coffee. Journalists and politicians who say such things, what kind of education did they have? Did they ever read the Communist Manifesto that Engels and I wrote when we were young men? In place of the old bourgeois society, with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. Did you hear that? An association. Do you know what the objective of communism is? The freedom of the individual to develop himself, herself, as a compassionate human being. Do they think that just because someone calls himself a communist or a socialist and then acts like a gangster, understands what communism is? To kill those that disagree with you. Is that the communism that I gave my life for? That monster in Russia who grabbed all the power for himself and insisted upon interpreting my ideas like a religious fanatic when he was lining his old comrades up against the wall in front of firing squads, did he allow his citizens to read the letter that I wrote to the New York Tribune in which I said that capital punishment cannot be justified in any society calling itself civilized? Communism is not supposed to reproduce the stupidities of capitalism. Yeah, Engels and I spoke of a dictatorship of the proletariat, but not the dictatorship of a party or a central committee, not the dictatorship of one man, but a temporary dictatorship of the working class. The mass of the people will take over the state and govern in the interest of all, until such time as the state itself becomes unnecessary and gradually disappears. Bakunin, of course, disagreed. He said that any state, even a worker state, if it had army, police, prisons, will become a tyranny. Bakunin loved to argue with me. They keep saying that capitalism has triumphed. Triumph? Fine. Because the stock market has risen to the sky and shareholders are even wealthier than they were before? Triumphed when 1/4 of American children live in poverty and 40,000 of them die every year before their first birthday? $100,000 people line up before dawn in New York City for 2,000 jobs. What will happen to the 98,000 people who are turned away? Is that why you're building more prisons? Oh yeah, capitalism has triumphed. But over whom? You have miracles of technology. You've sent man into the stratosphere. But what of the people remaining here on earth? Why are they so fearful? Why did they turn to drugs, to alcohol? Why did they go berserk and kill? It's all in your papers. And your politicians, bloated with pride, will say, oh, now the world will move to the free enterprise system. Has everyone become stupid? Don't you know the history of the free enterprise system? When the governments did nothing for the people and everything for the rich? When your government gave 100 million acres of land free to the railroads and looked the other way as the Chinese immigrants and Irish immigrants working 12 hours a day building the railroads died in the heat and cold. And when the workers finally rebelled and went on strike, your government sent in the army to smash them into submission. Why did I write Das Kapital if I did not see the miseries of capitalism, of the free enterprise system? In England, little children were put to work in the textile mills because their tiny fingers could work the spindles. Here in America, young girls went to work in the mills of Massachusetts at age 10 and died at age 25. Cities were cesspools of poverty and vice. That is capitalism, then and now. All right, I confess, I did not reckon with capitalism's ingeniousness in surviving. I could not imagine that there would be drugs to keep a sick system alive, wars to keep industries going, and to make people so crazed with patriotism that they forget their own misery. And religious fanatics promising the masses that Jesus is going to return. I know Jesus. He's not coming back. I was wrong in 1848, thinking that capitalism was on its way out. My timing was a bit off, perhaps by 200 years. But the system will be transformed. All of our present systems will be transformed. People are not fools. I remember the words of your President Lincoln when he said, "You cannot fool all of the people all of the time." Our common sense, our instinct for decency and justice will bring us all together. Don't scoff. It has happened before, and it can happen again on a much grander scale. And when it does, the rulers of society, with all of their wealth and all of their armies, will be helpless to prevent it. Their servants will refuse to serve, and their soldiers will disobey orders. Yeah, capitalism has accomplished wonders unsurpassed in history, but it is still preparing its own death. Its voracious appetite for profit, more profit, creates a world of chaos. It turns everything, art, music, literature, even beauty itself, into commodities to be bought and sold. It turns human beings into commodities, and not just the factory workers, the physicians, the scientists, the lawyers, the poets, the artists. They all must sell themselves in order to survive. And what will happen when we all finally realize that we are all workers and that we all have a common enemy? We will come together with others to fulfill ourselves. And not just those in our own country. Capitalism needs a global market. Its cry is free trade because it needs to wander freely everywhere in the world to make more profit. But in so doing, it is unwittingly creating a global culture. People are crossing borders as never before in history, and ideas are crossing borders with them. Something new is bound to come of this. I miss my daughters. When I was living with Jenny in Paris in 1843, I was 25, and I wrote that in the new industrial system, people are estranged from their work because it is distasteful to them. They are estranged from nature when smoke, smells, noise invade their senses. And they are estranged from others because everyone is pitted against everyone else, scrambling for survival. And they are estranged from their own selves, living a life that's not their own, living as they do not really want to live, in the hope that a good life is possible, but only in dreams, in fantasies. But it does not have to be. There is still a possibility of choice. Just a possibility, I admit. Nothing is certain. That I now know. I was too damn certain. But I do know one thing, that anything is possible. But it requires for people to get up off their ass. Does that sound too radical for you? Remember, being radical simply means to grasp the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is us.